Hey everybody, Dirili here. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Hakuouki Zuisoroku, the fan disc material from the first game, or the extras added to the PS3 version, Stories of the Shinsengumi. Today we're doing Saito Memories of Love 6 and 7. Let's see what 6 is about. You can just sit back, relax, and let me read you a story. Memories of Love, Saito 6. April 1868. After Nagakura and Harada's departure, Saito finds himself forced to take on even more responsibilities. Being a Fury, this is doubly difficult, but he pushes forward. Concerned, the protagonist resolves to tell him to take a break. That sounds familiar. Are we just going into more detail in this one about that?
I'm fine. I only need a moment.
Like this? That's not good. He stumbled, and I barely caught him. There was no color in his lips, and his breathing was coming in ragged gasps. His every movement looked weak, which was perhaps more disturbing than anything. Until that moment, I hadn't fully grasped just how difficult each day was for him. My heart ached in sympathy. I wanted nothing more than to help him. Blood! Take my blood! Somehow, we made our way safely from Edo to Koshu. But after a disagreement with Kondo, Nagakura and Harada had left the Shinsengumi. Another of my least favorite moments. Saito saw them off without hesitation or sentimentality. Well, at least without showing it. Though he remained stoic, however, I knew that their departure must have affected him deeply. It affected the rest of the organization as well. With 2 captains gone, Saito was forced to take on more and more responsibilities. He ignored the limitations of his Fury body and worked day and night until he finally collapsed. Even then, he refused to rest. Perhaps he felt that if he stopped even for a moment, the Shinsengumi would fall apart. He neglected to consider that working himself ragged would ultimately hurt the Shinsengumi more than help it. April 1868. It's both him and Hijikata doing that. We were staying at the Kaneko mansion in Nagarayama as we prepared for the journey to Aizu. I couldn't bear to watch Saito working himself to death. Memories of Love, Part 6. April 1868. Please, at least rest until the sun goes down. What are you going to do if you collapse again? His mouth twitched in a momentary frown.
I know my body much better than you. There's no need for concern.
Like I'm going to believe that. If you know your limits so well, explain why you worked so hard you just passed out the other day.
I will not make that mistake again.
Well, you made it once. I don't believe you.
You don't believe me? Are you suggesting I'm lying?
I'm suggesting you don't know what you're talking about. His brows drew together. I didn't intend to back down, though. You're not someone who cuts corners, but you're also not very good at taking care of yourself. I know you're going to push yourself too hard. When that happens, I might not be here to give you blood again. Or you might collapse in front of other people, or somewhere where there isn't anyone to help you.
Well,
what? He didn't seem to have a rebuttal. There was a certain amount of truth to my argument, and he knew it.
Shinpachi and Sanan are gone, and Soji is too ill to leave his bed, and the chief and the commander have more to do than ever. There's too much for me to do. I can't afford to rest.
He was stubborn. Too stubborn. You stayed up late yesterday, right? I understand what you're saying, I really do, but if you don't get enough sleep, you're not going to be able to do your job. Don't you think it's going to be more trouble for Kondo and Hijikata if you lose it again? He probably would have preferred I retreat and leave him to his work, but this was too serious, and if I didn't keep pushing him, he would continue to exhaust himself.
You have never struck me as stubborn before.
Really?
Why are you so concerned for me?
I think I've always been stubborn. I've been stubborn quite a bit in this game. How was I going to answer that? Let's see. No reason. None at all. No reason. I'm just worried about you.
Do you really feel that's a satisfactory answer?
Yeah. Saito, you're making everyone worry. You're a Fury now, but you're still doing all this work. I don't think I've seen you take a single break. You can't totally neglect yourself and just tell people not to worry when they get concerned. It doesn't work like that. His face clouded.
Am I really giving you so much cause for concern?
He sounded almost surprised. Yes, you definitely are. Everyone knows you have a lot on your plate, but when you say you're fine, it just makes people worry more. He looked at me for a moment, then nodded.
I see. I suppose you have a point. I apologize for worrying you so much.
His apology appeared to be sincere.
I will sleep tonight as you have suggested.
Thank you. Wait, are you not going to rest right now?
I still have much to do. I won't be able to rest if I stop in the middle of a task.
I stifled the urge to scream. Don't fairies do better when they sleep during the day and get up at night? So why don't you rest now and then get up after the sun goes down? I tried to persuade him, but Saito just shook his head. Come on, it makes sense.
No, I would not be able to sleep knowing I left work undone.
There's always work to do. You'll never be able to sleep then, ever.
I already consented to your request that I rest. Isn't that enough?
No, do it now. Ugh, why is he being so obstinate? We're just butting heads here. I was beginning to doubt he'd rest at all. In fact, I suspected he would only pretend to sleep and then work until morning behind my back. That was the last straw. I reached out and pulled the documents he'd been working on off his desk. Uh-oh, that could be trouble. Fine, I'm taking these to Kondo.
What? Don't be foolish. This manner of work is below him.
Maybe, but caring about your health isn't. I know for a fact Kondo is really worried about you. When I tell him you'll have time to rest if he does these, then I think he'll be happy to.
You're missing the point. I can't allow the chief to do this sort of work. Give them back, Chizuru.
No, you promised to rest today. I thought warriors didn't go back on their promises. That's what Inoue told me, at least. That's a low blow, now that he's gone. At Inoue's name, Saito gave up. He sighed and slumped back.
You never intended to listen to me, did you? Very well, do as you please.
Thanks, I'll make up your bed right away. I got to work immediately before he had a chance to change his mind. Do I get to tuck him in bed?
How long do you mean to remain here?
Until you fall asleep. You've already proven to be treacherous. I had to make sure you keep your word. Well, until you go to sleep. If I leave, you might just start working again. Yep, he probably would.
Look, I've made myself ready for bed. I've agreed to give the work I finished today to the chief. I've done all that, and you still refuse to take me at my word.
Yep. Sorry, I'm worried about you.
I can't.
Can't what? Can't sleep with me here? He slumped back and rubbed the bridge of his nose in exasperation. But behind that, I caught a glimpse of a smile. Aw. He climbed onto his bed and was about to pull the blanket up when I reached out my hand. Saito, would you like me to hold your hand until you fall asleep? Aw. Like when he held my hand when I was sick. He looked confused. Aw.
How do you remember that?
Ah, so it is a callback to that. Oh, so it wasn't just a dream?
No, it was. No one cared for you when you were ill.
I didn't say anything about anyone taking care of me when I was sick. How would you know that? It wasn't obvious that you let the cat out of the bag. Come on. He swallowed and looked around in a way that almost seemed nervous. Normally he was as emotive as a slab of rock, but now...
All right, so what if I took care of you?
I wasn't accusing you. I just wanted you to know how happy I was, to know it wasn't just a dream. It made me feel a lot better to have you holding my hand that night. So I just wanted the chance to return the favor. May I? He looked at me for a long moment, his eyes searching my face. Then, reluctantly, he extended his hand toward mine. I took it just like he had that long, feverish night. It's just the same. Well, I guess the roles are reversed, but...
Yes.
Well, and he's not really sick. He's just exhausted. His eyes stared off into the distance.
Shinpachi and Sanan were here. Soji was ill, but well enough to leave his bed. Gen and Yamazaki were alive and healthy. Heisuke and I were still human.
I know. Memories of Kyoto swirled up inside my head, some of them good, some of them painful. Life had been far from perfect for me, but at least everyone had been healthy and alive. But now...
You haven't changed.
What?
Everywhere I went, you followed me. You still do.
And I plan to forever and ever.
When anything happened, I would hear you call my name, That does not seem to have changed.
I guess you're right. When I thought back on all the time we'd spent together, I felt myself smile. Saito's expression suddenly turned sad.
But how much longer will that last? You have no reason to remain with us until the end.
There is, you! I squeezed his hand and shook my head. No. I'll stay here as long as I can. I don't have a home anymore. With my father changed, there was nowhere for me to go. I had no other relatives to depend on. Well, there's Kaoru, you just don't know about him. The Shinsengumi was all I had left. Saito looked at me for a long time, and behind his eyes I could see his mind working, trying to think of the words. When he finally spoke, it was almost a whisper.
Nowhere else to go. You're like me.
What? Was the Shinsengumi all he had too? At the time, his revelation took me by surprise. Well, I thought you already knew the Shinsengumi was pretty much his life all this time. Man, I love his scenarios, but they're ending so abruptly, it seems like. It feels like the other ones have more of a decrescendo. And these ones just stop. Alright, Saito Memories of Love 7. August 1868. The protagonist has decided to accompany Saito when he leaves the Shinsengumi to join the Aizu. The night before they leave for Shirokawa, Saito makes her a promise. Another wonderful moment.
And that is your answer, then?
I told him it was, and he drew me close. His voice shook as if he were about to cry. I could feel his arms tremble as they wrapped around me. When I looked into his eyes, I thought I could see fear somewhere deep within them. I'd never seen him act that way before, but even this aspect of him was precious to me. Everything about him is precious. April 1868. The Kaneko mansion in Nagarayama was attacked by furies, and in order to give us time to escape, Kondo surrendered himself. Hijikata and Heisuke returned to Edo to petition for a pardon for Kondo, leaving Saito to lead the Shinsengumi toward Aizu. By the time we reunited with Hijikata, spring had given way to summer. Despite the commander's best efforts, Kondo had been condemned and beheaded. The Aizu submitted a proposal to return to the front and regain Shirokawa Castle. Saito's loyalty to the Aizu pressed him to request that we agree and help retake it. Hijikata, however, disagreed, and instead we kept moving toward the northeast. Neither would yield, and eventually they chose to part ways. Before, Saito had always obeyed Hijikata's orders without question. This was the first time I had ever seen him defy the commander. I knew that recapturing the castle would prove dangerous. But whatever the danger, I wanted to remain by his side. I was as sure of that as Saito was of his choice. August 1868. Saito and I had remained in the Aizu domain. At last it was time to attack the castle. But promise first. Memories of Love, Part 7. August 1868. When the sun rose the next morning, we would be marching to Shirokawa Castle. The battlefield was not in our favor. Our enemy had every advantage, and we were attempting to besiege a castle, one of the warfare's most dangerous gambits. But even with so much arrayed against us, I felt neither fear nor anxiety. Perhaps because I had chosen my own path, or perhaps because I was at the side of the man I loved. That always helps.
Chizuru, shouldn't you rest? If you remain awake all night, you may collapse during the march tomorrow.
He was standing near the window, looking over at me. The same goes for you, doesn't it? You need to rest too. He looked away, almost shy.
I do not know how much more time we will have together.
Don't say that.
Would you laugh if I said that it seems like a waste to spend that time asleep?
So you want to watch over me while I sleep? No. I shook my head. I feel the same way. I don't want to miss a moment with you. Why don't we just sleep together then?
I see.
His response was short, but I could hear the emotion behind his words. We'd seen several battles since parting ways with Hijikata, but now I understood we would be lucky to emerge from this conflagration alive, let alone victorious. If nothing else, it had taught us to appreciate the time we had together. Saito turned wordlessly to look out the window. Do you like the stars? For a moment, he said nothing. Then he turned and spoke, and there was a note of playfulness in his voice.
Why would you think that?
Oh, from many moments we've had together in the forest. On that night in Kofu, and on the day we left the Kaneko mansion, you were looking up at the night sky. I've caught you like that many times.
You've been watching me quite closely.
I actually talked to you those 2 nights too. Well, yes, I've cared about you for a long time. I didn't realize what I was saying until the words were already out of my mouth. I wasn't especially surprised that I'd said them, more that, until that moment, I hadn't realized how long my feelings for Saito had existed. You're not gonna blush for me? Saito shrugged awkwardly.
It is only the night sky. I love the sky during the day, and rainbows, and the sea as well.
The sky, rainbows, and the sea? That seemed like an odd collection of things. Was there anything they had in common? That they're beautiful? And their nature? He squinted out the window.
I like to see things that remind me of the grandeur of life. The sky, or rainbows, or the sea. When I look at anything so majestic, my sorrow, or worries, or fears seem smaller than nothing.
Oh. Now that I thought back, I had often found him looking up at the night sky when he faced a difficult choice, or felt his heart begin to waver. His shoulders drooped. What? Why?
Kondo and Hijikata were the same. So long as I followed them, I knew I would not go astray. They stood for something so grand, so powerful.
So looking at them was like looking at the stars and the sky. I walked up behind him. Is that what's bothering you right now? The 2 men who guided you are gone. Are you feeling lonely? He wrapped his hands gently around mine.
But I am not lonely. I have you.
Good answer. He smiled. It warmed my heart to hear him say it, but am I really enough? My eyes darted around the room nervously. When you're worried or scared or confused, how am I going to help you? I knew very well how much Hijikata and the Shinsengumi had meant to him. To think I might be able to take that place seemed unthinkable, and more than a little arrogant. Saito's hands tightened around mine. He was still a little awkward, but he twined his fingers through mine and squeezed.
Having you by my side is more than enough. I cannot allow you to see me at my worst. That drives me to always be at my best. Simply seeing your face makes me wish to be a better man. There is nothing for you to worry about.
Oh. I felt as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. To know that he needed me. It was like that final piece had fallen into place. Now I could look forward to see myself spending the rest of my life at his side. Unfortunately, that time might come sooner than either of us would like. So, while we were together, we would share as much of each other as we could. But what did I want to talk to him about? Everything! Oh man, I had to say the past, but I'd rather say the future. Oh well, the past. Oh, you remember this? I pulled a bag from my pocket and began to open it. Saito watched quizzically.
No, I don't. What am I supposed to remember?
Is it the cherry blossom petal from the day when he left for the temple guardians? I giggled and pulled the bag fully open. Inside was a pressed flower petal. I was right! The color had faded, but it was still unmistakably a cherry blossom.
That.
Yes, that. His eyes went wide. He swallowed and reached out gingerly, as if he was afraid to touch it. The petal was something Saito had given me a long time ago, when he left the Shinsengumi to infiltrate the guardians of the Imperial Tomb.
You've kept it all this time. I can't.
Yep, it's all dried up now, and not in very good shape, but... He stared down at the tiny petal, and I could see 100 emotions flit across his face. I didn't need words to understand.
Then there has been something unchanging by my side all this time, and I never realized.
He smiled, pleased. What? You mean the petal? But it's all dried up.
Not the petal, your heart. Since I gave you this flower, it has not changed. And I hope it will never change.
He squeezed his eyes shut, and was silent for a long moment. Then he carefully handed the petal back to me.
Thank you, Chizuru. You have shown me something wonderful.
Oh, you're welcome. I could hear the powerful swell of emotion in his voice, and my heart beat a little faster. Silence fell, but it was a warm, comfortable silence. Outside the window, the world was slowly turning white. It was almost dawn. We stood shoulders touching and held hands. Eventually, he turned to me and whispered,
Chizuru, I want to make a promise to you.
What do you mean? He looked deep into my eyes.
Whatever happens now, I will protect you with my life. This is not an order from Hijikata, or the Shinsengumi, or the Aizu. This is an order from me.
His voice was calm and silent, but I could hear the steel in it. It was his vow to me. Behind those beautiful eyes, I could see how much he cared for me. How could I answer that? I could feel tears at the corners of my eyes as I reached out for him. I needed to be closer. Ah, yes! We need more close moments with Saito. It was bold, I knew that, but I didn't know what else to do. It would have been easy to simply tell him that I believe in him, but that didn't seem like nearly enough. Perhaps this could show him the depth of everything I feel. Slowly, timidly, I pulled away.
Why?
I should think that's kind of obvious. I don't know. Do you too, Chizuru?
But...
I looked away, embarrassed, and he stopped. Silence fell between us a second time. That wasn't even our first kiss, I don't think. But even as seconds turned into minutes, the heat in my cheeks refused to dissipate. So I took his hand. Should we rest?
Yes.
His hand felt warm in mine. It's about time you're resting. It was Saito's turn to blush and look away. I squeezed his hand tighter and smiled. We had another kiss with him. Sadly, next video is our last one with him. And then we move on to Heisuke, and then we have like a plethora of extra different character scenes from lots of other people in the game. So, hope to see you there to finish things up with Saito. I'd love to see you there or in some of my other videos, and I'd be so grateful for any likes, comments, subscriptions, or shares with your friends to show some support. Thank you so much for joining me, and I wish you all health, happiness, and safety. Dirili signing out. Bye bye everybody.